Let's be real for a second. Have you ever found yourself doing everything right? Being kind, being thoughtful, bending over backwards for other people, and still ending up the one who's hurt, overlooked, or taken for granted? You hold the door open. You say yes when you're already tired. You check in on people who never check on you. You keep your mouth shut when someone disrespects you, because being the bigger person is what you were taught. You do everything to be what the world says is a good person, but here's what they don't tell you. Constantly trying to be the good one in every situation can leave you feeling empty, used, invisible, like no one sees how hard you're trying. And the worst part? When you finally say enough, when you draw a boundary or speak up, you're suddenly the problem. People say you've changed. You're too cold now, too distant, too selfish. So let me say this loud and clear. Being a good person does not mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean silencing your needs, swallowing your opinions, or sacrificing your peace to keep the peace. If being good means betraying yourself just to make everyone else comfortable, then maybe it's time to rethink what that word really means. This video is not about turning you into someone cold, rude, or distant. It's about freeing you from the toxic version of goodness that's built on guilt, fear, and people-pleasing. Because the truth is, when you stop trying so hard to be a good person and start focusing on being a real person, you become someone powerful, someone authentic, someone who's not afraid to be kind and assertive, generous and grounded, loving and self-respecting. So if you're tired of being the one who gives and gets nothing back, if you're done with the guilt, the self-doubt, and the quiet resentment, this video is for you. Let's break this down. Why do we feel so pressured to be good? What does that even mean? And how is it holding us back? Let's talk about it. Let's just say it. Trying to be a good person is exhausting. Not because goodness is a bad thing, but because the version of good that we're taught is broken. From the time we're kids, we're spoon-fed this idea that being good means being agreeable, that a good person keeps the peace, avoids confrontation, and always puts others first. We're told things like, don't be selfish, don't make a scene, just be nice. And slowly but surely, we internalize this rulebook that says, if I make others happy, then I'm a good person. If I disappoint them, say no, or draw a boundary, I must be doing something wrong. But here's the bold truth. Trying to be a good person, by those standards, will keep you small. It'll have you ignoring red flags, overextending yourself, apologizing for things you didn't do, and feeling guilty for simply existing in your own truth. And let's not confuse it. Being a good person isn't the problem. The performance of goodness is. The idea that you must constantly earn your worth by sacrificing yourself for others is a dangerous lie. Real goodness is not about over-functioning, over-apologizing, or over-giving. You don't need to be nice at your own expense. You don't have to keep people comfortable at the cost of your peace. You don't have to smile through disrespect to prove your value. In fact, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is say no, is walk away, is refuse to carry emotional weight that was never yours to begin with. So here's the real thesis of this video. Stop trying to be a good person by society's impossible standards, and start being a real person. Be someone with values, with limits, with a voice. Be someone who's not afraid to be misunderstood or even disliked, because your self-worth doesn't depend on outside approval. Being real isn't always easy, and it's definitely not always popular, but it's the only way to live without resentment, without burnout, without losing yourself in the process. Goodness should never come at the cost of your authenticity. And the moment you stop performing and start showing up as you truly are, that's when the real respect, the real peace, and the real power begins. I remember the exact moment it clicked for me. I was at this small gathering, nothing major, just a mix of friends, acquaintances, and those people you kind of know but wish you didn't have to see. You know the type. There was this one person there. Let's call him Mark. Mark had this habit of making backhanded compliments, the kind that sound nice on the surface but leave you questioning yourself afterward. Like, oh wow, you actually look good in that outfit. Or, I didn't think you'd be into something so deep. Just subtle jabs with a smile. Every time I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd been trained to. I didn't want to make things awkward. I didn't want to be too sensitive. I thought, if I just stay chill, keep things light, I'll look like the bigger person. But that night, something shifted. Mark made another slick comment, this time about how I always try too hard to seem wise, whatever that means. Everyone laughed, and I did what I usually do, smiled, looked away, took the hit quietly. But inside, I felt it, that gut punch. That little voice saying, "Why do you keep letting this slide?" I looked around the room and I realized no one else was going to say anything. No one was coming to rescue me. And maybe they didn't even notice. That's when I understood. I wasn't just letting Mark talk to me like that. I was teaching him that it was okay. That I'd take it. That I'd still smile and play nice, even when I was being chipped away at, one joke at a time. So I stopped. I didn't snap. I didn't call him out dramatically. I just looked him dead in the eye, didn't laugh, didn't smile, and said, "Why do you talk to people like that?" The room went quiet. He stumbled, tried to brush it off, but the moment had already landed. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was the one being difficult. I felt free. That was the day I realized being a good person doesn't mean staying silent when you're disrespected. It means being honest. With yourself, with others. And sometimes that honesty is uncomfortable. But it's also where your self-respect begins. That night didn't just change how I responded to people like Mark. It changed how I saw myself. I wasn't a mean person for setting a boundary. I was finally just being real. Here's the part most people never talk about. A lot of what we call being a good person isn't actually about goodness. It's about control. We try to be nice, agreeable, low maintenance, helpful, because somewhere along the way, we were taught that it's how we earn love, or respect, or safety. Think about it. When you were growing up, what happened when you said no? When you got angry? When you cried too loud or stood up for yourself? For a lot of us, the message was clear. Good people don't do that. So what did we do? We adapted. We got quiet. We got small. We became peacemakers, people pleasers, overachievers, because that was safer. That got praise. That made life smoother. But here's the trap. When your goodness is tied to other people's comfort, you give your power away. You become easy to manipulate. People learn that you'll say yes even when you want to say no. That you'll forgive even when they haven't changed. That you'll swallow your truth just to keep the peace. And they'll take full advantage. Not necessarily because they're evil, but because you've trained them that there are no consequences for crossing you. And that's what hurts the most. When your kindness is mistaken for weakness. When your silence is seen as submission. When people take your compassion and turn it into a convenient excuse to treat you like less. But let's flip the script. Real goodness isn't about being agreeable. It's about being grounded. It's about being kind, but with clarity. Compassionate, but with boundaries. It's the difference between helping someone because it aligns with your values and helping because you're afraid they'll be upset if you don't. The truth is, people who truly respect you don't need you to perform for them. They don't need you to always be agreeable. They can handle your no. They can handle your truth. And the people who can't, they were never seeing you. They were seeing the version of you that made their life easier. So the next time you feel the urge to over-explain, to say yes out of guilt, or to smooth over a situation that's hurting you, pause. Ask yourself, is this who I really am? Or is this who I think I have to be to stay liked? Choosing authenticity over performance is terrifying at first, but it's also the most liberating thing you'll ever do. Because the moment you stop trying to be a good person and start showing up as your whole self, that's when people finally meet the real you. And that's who deserves to be loved, respected, and seen. All right, It's time for the real challenge, because talking about this stuff is one thing, but living it, that's where everything shifts. So here's my question to you. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to be liked and started trying to be real? If you stopped saying yes when you meant no. If you stopped softening your truth to keep others comfortable. If you stopped apologizing for taking up space. For a lot of people, the idea of not being seen as good feels terrifying. Because what will people think? What if they get mad? What if they walk away? But here's something I've learned the hard way. If someone only accepts you when you're bending, breaking, or performing, they were never accepting you to begin with. They were accepting the mask, the role, the illusion. And living like that, constantly managing how you're perceived, is a full-time job. It'll rob you of your peace, your energy, your joy. So here's my challenge to you, and it's a bold one. For the next week, I want you to practice radical honesty. With yourself first, and then with others. That means when someone asks you to do something you really don't want to do, you pause. And instead of immediately saying yes, you say, "Let me think about it." When someone makes a disrespectful joke or comment and you'd normally smile to smooth it over, you don't. You let the silence speak. You let your face stay neutral. You give them the space to hear their own words echo. And when someone questions your choices, your lifestyle, your job, your boundaries, you don't launch into a justification. You simply say, "Because that's what felt right for me." And then you stop talking. It might feel uncomfortable at first. You might even feel guilty. That's normal. But keep going, because every time you act from truth instead of fear, you're reclaiming your life. This isn't about being cold or shutting people out. It's about showing up as your whole self, flaws, boundaries, opinions, and all, and letting the world adjust. So let's do this together. Stop performing. Start living. Be kind, but don't be small. Be thoughtful, but don't be afraid to say no. And above all, remember this. Your job is not to be liked by everyone. Your job is to respect yourself enough to be you. That's the kind of good that doesn't need approval, because it's rooted in something far more powerful: self-worth. So here we are. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just about being nice. It's about truth, about freedom, about coming home to yourself after years of trying to earn love by shrinking. The world will always have something to say. Someone will always think you're too much, too distant, too loud, too assertive, too emotional, too quiet, too whatever. But here's the truth. You don't need to live your life on other people's scorecards. You were never meant to mold yourself into everyone else's version of good. What if good didn't mean overextending yourself? What if good wasn't about saying yes when you want to scream no? What if good didn't involve tolerating disrespect just to keep your image clean? What if good looked like self-respect? Like choosing peace over approval? Like being so rooted in your truth that you don't flinch when someone questions it? That's what I want for you. Not a life of performance. Not a life spent filtering every decision through someone else's comfort zone, but a life that's real. A life where you're allowed to be fully human. Messy, bold, honest, and still worthy. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. It helps more people see this message. Subscribe if you want more content on boundaries, confidence, and owning your life without apology. And drop a comment below. What's one moment when you realized being nice wasn't working anymore? Or what's one boundary you're committing to today? I read every comment, and I love hearing your stories. Most of all, share this with someone who needs this reminder. Someone who gives too much, who apologizes too often, who's always trying to hold it together and still ends up feeling like they're not enough. Remind them and remind yourself. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. Because respect doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from being authentic. And when you stop trying to be a good person and start becoming a whole person, that's when the game changes. Stay strong, stay honest, and never again apologize for showing up as the person you actually are.